Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Jasper Smith. I'm a reporter here at the Chronicle of Higher Education, where I cover minority serving institutions, how race shapes college campuses, and the future of DEI in higher education. Today, we're talking all about what students need to feel supported right now. Joining me on the panel is Dr. DeRionne Pollard, the former president of the Nevada State University and current president and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges, and Dr. Russell Lowery-Hart, the Chancellor of the Austin Community College District. Dr. Pollard and Dr. Hart, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, to be
Thank
here.
you.
Let's start with the big picture. The term student success gets used often, but it can mean very different things on very different campuses. So to start, how would each of you define it at this moment?
DeRionne, I'll let you kick us off.
Oh, you're so thoughtful. I was going to say you're on campus right now, so I was going to let you answer that question. But I love that. First, thank you, Jasper, for that question and the opportunity to be here to our colleagues at the Chronicle. Very happy to do so. I think at its most basic level, student success is helping students achieve the goals that they have for themselves and their family at the most basic level of that. I think a few of us also would add other things to that, that these students are able to be contributors to the society in which they are a part, that they're able to drive, and particularly for community college students and first generation students, economic mobility for them and their families. So I think that there are a number of corollaries that one might add to that. But at the beginning and the end of defining student success for me is that students are able to achieve the goals they had, doing that in a supportive environment that met them where they are, that understood the lived experience of that student and helped put them in the right direction. So Russell, you come in and clean me up there.
There's nothing to clean up there, my friend. It's an evolving definition, Jasper. I think uh, a decade ago we would have defined success as access, enrollment, and then we transitioned to defining it as completion and transfer. And now I think we're transitioning to defining student success, as DeRionne just pointed out, to completing with a degree or a skill or a certificate that leads to a family sustaining wage. Um, did we offer the student what we promised? Did they gain that in our execution? And has it changed the economic path of their family? And when we think about those labor market outcomes as the new definition of student success, are are we ensuring that we're seeing that economic success fairly across the entire college with all students, no matter age, no matter gender or identity?
Thank you. Yeah. So both of you have extensive experience working with community college students. And so I'd really love to know, how does preparing for and measuring student success differ for community college students?
Russell?
Well, I spent most of my career in the university and I transitioned to community colleges about 15 years ago. Um, One, because I think community college students are the hope of this country in ways that I never understood previously, that they are smart and they're ambitious and they're capable. But the challenges they bring with them are dramatically different in both heartbreaking ways and really exciting ways. Our students need us differently, and they need us differently at different points in their lives. And so we're not a, a sector that monolithically serves the 18-year-old that just graduated high school, although she needs us more now than ever as well. Uh, but I think we offer a different level of support, a different level of confidence building, and a whole lot of different skill points that can lead to a family sustaining wage almost
And I think
immediately.
just to amplify that even more is our response to your first question, Jasper. I think really encapsulated this complexity of the community college student, who I also might offer is not too unlike a state university or state college student in a lot of ways. What I find very compelling is that community colleges represent students whose lived experiences are as complex. Services and support that we offer at a community college mirrors that complexity. So, as I often say, we serve the 18-year-old as well as the dislocated worker. We serve the working mom and the stay-at-home dad. We serve the folks who are trying to figure out what their part of the American dream should look like, and those who are at the end of their careers and are looking for leisure experiences. We're all of those things comprehensively. So as a result of that, when you look at what community college students need, they need very clear and excellent advising and onboarding when they come into our organizations. They need robust support services, whether they are parenting students, if they are veteran students, if they are students who are unhoused, if they're students who are first generation, if they're students who live locally or attend online. So we have to define all of those things for them in our services. And we also think about how they exit. So many of our students are going to be thinking about transfer. Many of our students are thinking about going directly into the world of work. Some may be going into military. All of those things happen. So we have to design a lived experience for them that's responsive to that definition of student success that you heard us talk about and the complexity of the students that Russell just talked about.
We talk a lot about here in Austin, and I've talked about our typical student across the country with
Maria.
Maria. Our typical student in Austin is not that different than I think the typical student across the country. She's a woman of color. She's a first generation college student. She's 26. She may be raising a child, but she's typically working 2 part-time jobs and going to school part-time as a result. Our schedules, our access points, our technologies, our textbooks aren't often set up for her. Our support systems are often set up for her in higher education. And if we're going to truly meet the moment that the country and the economy needs of us, we've got to see her, listen to her, and reimagine ourselves for her in ways that Dr. Pollard just outlined.
Yeah, thank you both for that. We're going to feed in some questions from the chat, the Q&A. Josh Hoey asked, if student support is not monolithic and each student's needs are unique, how do we address that at a large scale?
Well, I think actually both Dr. Lowery-Hart and large institutions. I was president of Montgomery College, and when I started, there was about 60,000 students. So we have that. And I think there are ways in which you do that. And what I loved about the question is that it requires systems. I think, unfortunately, sometimes that we tend to do things episodically in the higher education space. So we try to think of one particular student. And I think what we have to design now are systems and processes that meet students where they are. And if you can design for both the majority while also keeping the lived experiences of the minority in mind, it helps you, I think, design more robust systems. So for me, I think you do some of that work by looking at how students come into the organization, understanding your data as an institution. One of the reasons I'm in love with Russell for so many different reasons, but one of them is that you heard me say it, as soon as he started, I knew who Maria is because I've heard him talk about Maria. And that persona is grounded in the lived experiences of students, and they use that to design an educational experience for that. And I stole that from Russell when I was at Montgomery, designing these personas, and we were doing the same thing at Nevada State, so that we actually understand not the students that we wish we had or the students that we want to have, but the students we actually have right now. And if we systematically deconstruct the system, not to be designed for those of us who work at the institutions or even for the communities and influencers who are out there watching us, but we design it for the students we have and track their experience through our organization and design programs for that. But here's the other thing, that we stop also doing the things that we don't do well and look for partners that we can do that with, who can say, I'll take that on, because yes, we do a much better job of that. And to be quite frank, that's not relevant to your mission. So that's how I think you start to do some of that work. But Russell, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we try to do some of these things at scale.
Well, I can only affirm what you just said, and I'll try to add more detail to it. Um, there is a way to scale systems that can also be responsive to the individual student, but there is real predictive analytics and data that can drive what you know about your students at your institution, performance gaps and institutional equity gaps, is to scale the things that work and work across all student demographics. Advising, tutoring, engaged pedagogy, and social services, and accelerated learning. These are the things in Austin. These are the things at Amarillo. These are the things at Nevada State and Montgomery, that transformational institutions doubled down on and scaled for everyone. But when you scale advising and require it of every student, you may want to do training that allows you to understand how parenting students when and how they need advising differently, where they might perform better in group advising, but men of color need more direct mentoring as a part of their advising. Your students can tell you how they need to receive those systems uh, at scale, but I think all and execute it can be responsive uh, to the student needs individually.
Let's talk a little bit about the federal and state scrutiny of diversity initiatives that have forced so many institutions to rethink their language, to rethink their approach. The Chronicle has tracked over 430 college campuses that have made changes to their diversity initiatives since 2023 across 47 states and the District of Columbia. And so I'm really curious, I'd love to know, what have those shifts looked like for you? But most importantly, how are you navigating these changes while continuing to build inclusive campuses?
Well, in Texas, the words and the work of DEI were outlawed, and our funding was tied to our ability to fulfill that law. And I think every school in Texas is compliant with the law. And that doesn't mean that we don't know who our students are and what they need from us, however. Um, the the core crux of the DEI work was to ensure that every student was successful. That's the core mission of every institution anyway. So I think we have jettisoned some of the training around language, around using the right terminology, and have doubled down on relationships, understanding, care, love. Our vision at Austin Community College is that we're going to love our students to success. Um, Now, knowing who my students are and what they need from me in terms of love may look different based on disaggregated data and based on the systems that we just talked about. But every student deserves to have systems that love them to success in a college that will move them economically to a better place. And so the laws didn't change our fundamental purpose or mission. And I think it's challenged us to actually double down on who we are and what we're supposed to do, which is to love all of our students to success. And we talk about it in terms of fairness, in terms of uh, uh, being a place for everyone. And I think I think in some ways the DEI became about language when I think fundamentally it should be about changing systems to ensure that every student's successful. Um, did I like the politicization of our work? No. I think it's ultimately dishonoring and reductive, but it's also in my state the law of the land. That doesn't mean I cower and don't ignore who my students actually are and the cultures that shape who they are and shape who my employees are. Uh, but I can create a fair culture that is systemic and closing all performance gaps without having to language it.
Thank you for that. There are a couple things I'll offer just to build on to what Russell talked about. One is when I worked in Montgomery County, we had a superintendent there who used this phrase, all means all. And I was so struck by that because he would walk in and folks would say, well, I want to prioritize this particular population of students, or I want to challenge this particular notion of doing things that may benefit or may impact negatively either side of the coin or around a particular student group. He always says, all means all. My job is to make sure that we serve all students. And what I think this moment has taught us, and I loved Russell's comment here, is that there's if you think about radical, the Latin of that word is to get to the root of things. So for me, what I have chosen to think about when I think about all of these folks who are operating around this space and telling us how to do our work or thinking they have assertions about that is that I'm tending now to focus less on the nouns but more on the verb. And as Russell said, love your students to success. I believe that our job now is to make sure that we're serving all of our students. And therefore, if we are truly actualizing our mission dictates that we do certain types of things to ensure that we're delivering on the promise and commitment of our taxpayers, of our community of which we're a part, of the students who also invest and entrust us with their educational purpose. Does that mean that sometimes we have to modify the way we talk about certain types of things? I believe, and I think sometimes, as Russell said, that can be somewhat reductive and it has a way of really distracting us from the work. But if we go back to focusing on who our students are in this moment, not the ones we used to have, not the ones we wish we had, but the ones we have right now, the conversation becomes different. So if I think about how new students come into my organization, if I think about what the data tells me about how they experience the organization and what support services they need, if we redesign in a way that supports all students, and we then look at how we can, as an institution, be more responsive to individual student needs along the way, I think we have a different recipe. Is this an awkward moment for us? Yes. Is it sometimes uncomfortable for us right now? Yes. Is it forcing us to use a different muscle and skill set that we are very capable of doing? Yes. And do I have that's necessary right now?
I think the key moment requires us to see and respond to our students differently. And DeRionne talked about loving the students we have, not the students we used to have or we wished we had, or I think an epidemic in our education, loving the students that we were when we were in college.
Come on, come on,
Right.
come on.
But here's the thing, and I think the crux of what Dr. Pollard just referenced. Our institutions are often, and our processes and our support systems, and when they're offered and when our courses are scheduled, and when unpaid internships are required, are created in a vacuum of a college and a community that existed 30 years ago but doesn't exist anymore. And so we spend an inordinate amount of time and money training students when they come in to adapt to us and to learn our vernacular and our language and our systems and our support and to change their lives for us. And I think the moment calls for us to adapt to them, to change when and how we offer instruction, when and how we offer tutoring, counseling, basic needs supports, engaged learning, work-based learning pedagogy. When we can respond to who our students actually are and what they need from us, what we'll find is even if there are these differences in um, gender, sexuality, and race, ethnicity, age, and nationality, they're to have relationships of support. We all want to be loved. We all want to be successful. We all want to make a better life for ourselves. Let's build systems that root in those core things and then allow those core things to evolve in responding to the individual student needs as they engage those core systems.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, what are students requesting, demanding? What essentially are you responding to? As one person has just asked, in our Q&A, how are their lived experiences being brought to the table right now? Do they have a voice in, some of the decisions that are being made? Can we talk a little bit about, what exactly are you responding to when it comes to the students?
Well, you're probably going to get a little Russell sermon out of this one, so buckle up. Uh, the true reformation of higher education can't happen without the student being centered. At Austin Community College, uh, I pay secret shoppers to tell me how they're receiving the college and what experiences they need. We empowered our students to write the values for the college, and we engaged that by asking them to tell us what the perfect college looked and felt like to them. And the values are courage, compassion, joy, and yes, that's what they want from every employee. But the core things they need from us, um, they're working part-time, but they can't take 7 years to get an associate's degree and transfer. So they need accelerated 8-week classes. They're working 2 part-time jobs, but they're living in the war zone of poverty and they need help with emergency aid, with childcare, with transportation, with housing, with food, which is an epidemic in higher education across the country. They need tutoring support that is integrated in the class, and they need classes that are offered more than just 9 to 12, 4 days a week. And our students have told us that directly and been a part of the theory of change that is redesigning Austin Community College as a result.
And I think Dr. Lowery-Hart, I'll go to his church any day of the week to listen to him talk about these issues. So that sermon was appreciated because I think what is very important here, some of us have gotten, I think, somewhat distracted by the navel gazing that's occurring right now as we're trying to say, oh, we're uncomfortable right now. We're really challenged by what's happening. And as a result of that, it almost gave us permission not to do and regain our commitment to the work. What I would offer to you is that what I'm seeing from colleges and universities across this country, since I've kind of straddled the space for a little bit, is that they're literally doing this kind of, those of them who are really wanting to engage in direct work to support students, they're interrogating and re-interrogating some of their own practices and decisions and some of the things that are just most basic and core about how the college or university functions. So for instance, we talk about basic needs and security, but we also should be talking about parking privilege on campus. We should be having a conversation around how students can get to our campuses. How are we talking about, is the campus open on times when students need to have access to us? Will they have the ability to get meals when they come on campus? Some of those things outside of the classroom. But then we happen and talk about what's happening in the classroom. Are we providing robust, actively engaged, faculty designed and faculty supported professional development for our faculty? Are we having thoughtful conversations with staff around career ladders and how they can navigate the organization? Are we, and I loved your question, Jasper, I literally wrote down, I said, what students wanted, they wanted to be seen, heard, and valued. This is the same thing that any of us want. So in order to be seen, that means we actually have to bring them to the table to help make decisions within our institutions. We actually have to listen to them when they say things that make us uncomfortable and not dismiss it as Dr. Lowery-Hart said earlier, because, well, that's not how it was when I was in school. You're right. I haven't been in college in well, I'm not going to say how long, but I haven't been in college in quite some time as a student. So my lived experience is not the same one as the students here. And they want to feel valued. They don't want to have their lived experiences dismissed because it's inconvenient or it's not true based on our lens or interpretation. So we have to be willing to interrogate, redesign, and at the end of the day, understand that our students do have agency, and they do that, which is where they can decide where they go if they have mobility, or in the world of online education, they can make choices to attend different institutions that may not be their local community college or their state university or college. So we have to be much more thoughtful about that and be willing to challenge our own discomfort around students' needs, not challenge our discomfort about the fact that we're having to do things differently and it wasn't what we were prepared to do.
Well, and I think at the crux of it and the core of it, Dr. Pollard, is the systems were built centuries ago, and they were built on the concept of systemic racism without even knowing that that was a word, right?
Right.
And so if we want a fair system that is a place for all students, we have to redesign the system for and with all students. That doesn't mean you're ignoring the paths that students bring to the conversation. It means you're building systems for the masses, required advising, basic needs, tutoring,
supplemental instruction, all of the, yes.
all of that is really, really important. And the way to execute it allows you to see the individuality of your students and acknowledge the different journeys that they took to get to where you are.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about how we got to this point. In 2020, higher ed was very explicit in its focus to better serve Black students, other students from, underrepresented backgrounds. With the changes under, the current administration, and going back to President Trump's first administration, where does that work go from here?
Well, I think it goes in a couple places. One is that we, again, can, and I have no doubt that many of our institutions are trying to figure out what this looks like for them. But I think that part of what we have to do is to stop talking about what it looks like and actually get busy around trying to do the work of that. And I think in our frustration, our fear, all the verbs that go with that, we are, or nouns maybe I should say, all the things that go with that, we need to be far more deliberate, I think, in saying, okay, we've had this moment, let's start thinking about how we act from this moment on. So a part of it, and what is going to be the way in which we want to approach this? How do we manage change? I loved earlier, Dr. Lowery-Hart talked about the theory of change that he developed many years ago and has been working that and refining it and leading that through the work now at Austin, where he is. I think we have to be thinking about the same thing now. Change is inevitable. And maybe instead of thinking about this as change that's happening from the external being foisted on us, let's maybe think about it as transformation that is something that we do from within. And therefore, we have to be far more deliberate around our change management strategies. If I'm not being responsive, that means I'm being proactive. I'm actually starting to ask the questions that I should be asking, or maybe should have been the ones I should have been asking all along in very thoughtful and deliberate ways. How does this work advance our mission? How does this work protect students? How does this work ensure that we have employees able to do the work that we need to do? Answer those types of questions as a part of the redesign work. I think about some of the work that we were doing at Nevada State. I was very blessed to work with colleagues who came to me actually almost 2 years ago, year and a half, and said, DeRionne, we see this happening on the landscape. What are we going to do about it as an institution? And part of my job, one, was to listen and to talk with them about that, but then to develop a structure or a framework about what is going to be important here. How do we make sure that we protect our mission? How do we make sure that we protect our students? And how do we work to protect employees to the extent that we could do so? Being very high comms, developing very thoughtful surrogates who could talk about issues, learning how to manage and design curriculum responses ourselves, being very deliberate about understanding how decisions fit into a broader landscape, not just reacting to a particular memo that came out or reacting to a particular external driver. How does this fit into the broader theory of change for our organization? How does it fit into our long-term strategy as an organization, and then designing and responding accordingly? I think right now, and I'll say this thoughtfully, a lot of us as organizations, we spend a lot of time thinking about what this impact means for us, without thinking about how can we design effective responses that will allow us to continue to do the mission that we have, recognizing the context has changed. So those are things that responsiveness becomes particularly important, strategy becomes important, and figuring out how to link whatever we're doing to a broader architecture that I think we should be doing much more effectively as organizations. So I better pause because I got on my soapbox right there. So I'll Dr. Lowery-Hart, I'll let you chime in.
I love that soapbox. Listen, it's a scary political moment, and there's uncertainty at every level, and there's no state you can move to escape it. And
That's true.
and what I worry about is that we'll retreat into and retreat away from the moment. Uh, there are moments to defend ourselves and fight back, and there are moments to defend our students and to lean in. Uh, I can't tell you where your community context is, and I can't judge how you're doing it, and I'm not asking you to judge how I am doing it. I just know this, that if you want to change performance gaps, you have to change the systems that created them. And historically, what we have done is we have tried to change performance gaps by using disaggregated data to train the students who have the performance gaps, to train them how to navigate us. And I think it was the wrong approach.
Right.
I think our job is to use the disaggregated data to know how we need to change and adapt to our students. But there are some core things that we know help close performance gaps across the board. And that's our theory of change here at Austin Community College, that if we can get a strong start with a strong holistic advising, if we can make college affordable with required tutoring and free, available 24/7, and meet their basic needs in a culture of love and belonging, then Maria is going to complete. That cuts across all performance disaggregated data analysis. And then we get to refine how we execute some of those things with a cultural understanding that can be honorable and inclusive, and still meet the political moment without sacrificing our students' lives in the process.
Mhm. So we can't talk about, student needs and student success without, of course, talking about faculty. And so I want to turn our attention to a really great question that was brought up in the chat. How do you bring faculty and staff who are comfortable in the old ways to our newer, more diverse and community-based systems?
Mm. That is a profound question. I think one of the things that we saw, and actually I did my dissertation research on new faculty preparation and acculturation in community colleges. And one of the things that became very apparent as I was doing the research data, and this is over almost 25 years now, but I will tell you, I think the data probably continues to hold, is that at the end of the day, we have to decide about the investments that we're going to make in professional development. And one of the things that we see happening over and over and over again within organizations is that when budgets become contracted, one of the first things that we do is that we move away from professional development. And therefore, we don't make the investments that we should in allowing and encouraging faculty and staff to understand new models about how we deliver these types of programs and services, that we don't spend enough time bringing people in-house to come in and do that work for us. We don't spend enough time sending faculty and staff thoughtfully to places that we know that they can get that information and research and support from. So I think that we have to have a clear commitment. And I challenge any CEO while you're in the midst of these times. There are places where, yes, we have to make substantive cuts in different places when budgets become contracted. But I would challenge you, the moment we do that, and we see that in our organizations where you have that over a sustained period of time, you will see stagnation in the organization. So that's one of the ways we do it. I think secondly, and it goes back to Dr. Lowery-Hart's reference to Maria, I think we have to center the student experience and student data in every decision-making framework that we have within the organization. Insert student voices and experiences and data about the student voice and experience in our governance models, in our other employee spaces, whether it be at the department level, at the school level, at the program level, whatever the case may be, how your organization is designed. Those are very essential spaces because oftentimes it can't just be the institutional researcher who holds all the data. It has to be distributed within the organization thoughtfully. And the last one that I'll say on this about how we begin to do that is that we have to figure out what the incentives are. I was just sitting in a session where we were talking about Congress and some of the ways in which Congress is the result of where we have placed our priorities and incentives. I would argue that we have some of those same things that may exist within our own organizations. How have we decided what we will prioritize? What is of value when it comes to conversations around performance, around tenure, around the ways in which we think about the lived experience of faculty and staff? How do we recognize employees thoughtfully for those types of contributions? Those are ways I think you have to also incent the behavior that you wish to see and create spaces for faculty and staff to understand that, interrogate it, experiment with it, fail and fail fast, and figure out what's going to work later. Those are all the mechanisms that I think of immediately when I heard your question, Jasper.
1,000%. That message needs to be cropped and emailed out to every CEO in the entire country. Invest in professional development. The only thing that I would add, and Dr. Pollard referenced it, is it's got to be rooted in data, and faculty have to have access to very faculty specific data, departmentally specific data, not just broad data. And we have to have really, really painful, scary, and uncomfortable conversations with faculty that require professional development instead of suggest it because of the moment we're in. And we've got to be honest with our faculty colleagues who are incredible and I have faith in, and we build ourselves through that. If we don't meet this moment and change the way we think about teaching and learning, we're going to make ourselves obsolete. We can no longer live in the world where we impart information. Every piece of information we impart in a lecture, the students can find probably more engaged and can critically analyze and critique what you're saying in a lecture. They need to know what sources to trust. They need to learn how to access it. They need to learn how to apply it and use it. It's not, learning is no longer just about gaining information. It's learning what to do with it. And if we can't make the shift, we're on the precipice of AI making us obsolete. If we are just places where we give information, then AI can do it more efficiently and more effectively. We've got to be a place where we help students learn what to do with that information, not just impart it to them. And the only way we're going to get there is data, technology, applied learning, and professional development. And it's got to be the place that we spend our money.
You mentioned earlier, Jasper, and this conversation around resiliency. If you don't mind, I want to tell a little story, which I think really encapsulates Dr. Lowery-Hart's question. And I actually heard this. I had a friend of mine who tells the story that his wife was a cardiac nurse, and he ran up the stairs to he was at work and he called his wife and said, "Oh, honey, I felt palpitations. I need to go see a cardiologist." So he's talking to her. She said, "Baby," she said, "what's going on?" He said, "I ran up the top to the stairs, 4 or 5 flights of stairs. I was out of breath. I wasn't glistening. I was sweating and, went through this whole thing." And she said, "Sweetheart," she said, "cardiac health is not measured in what is happening in the moment. Cardiac health is actually measured in your recovery, and it's measured in your ability to how quickly your heart rate goes back down to normal where it's supposed to be." What I would offer to you is that so many of our organizations have become accustomed to operating in the stressful moments that we haven't learned about the other. EKG has a cycle that goes like this, right? You want to actually start seeing the recovery start to happen more quickly. We know this is a part. We are living in a highly stressful moment for higher education. But here's the thing, this wasn't the first time we've had to do this, and it will not be the last time we have to do it. Although this is probably a more special moment than any other has been before, as Dr. Lowery-Hart mentioned, because there are so many things converging on us at one time. Our job is to become more resilient by working on our organizational wellness. We all know what those things are: commitments to professional development, looking at systems, understanding and assessing those systems, asking and interrogating ourselves around what things are working and what things are not, holding up the mirror to ourselves and not waiting for somebody else to tell us what they see, but understanding what we see ourselves. All of those things become a part of measuring organizational wealth, wellness, vitality, and resiliency. And that's something that I know we have capacity for. The question is going to be how quickly that we're waiting to get over the navel gazing to a certain extent and start getting to the place where we can say, this is what we're doing as an organization to address this moment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the key is it is a scary moment, and it's not a moment
Very.
we have experienced directly in this at this scope and scale. Uh, and so I think our natural instinct is to restrict and wait. And
Yeah.
and so I
Yes.
talk to my faculty a lot who just feel overwhelmed, who feel burned out.
Yes.
And so I think burnout is something that we have to talk about, that fear and anxiety. Uh, if the caregiver is burned out, it means that we didn't have systems that supported the student, and that one person feels like they have to be the social worker, the mental health counselor, and the
Yes.
instructor.
Right.
Build your systems that have those things, and your faculty just have to connect students to them. But if you're requiring your faculty to be all of them, they're only going to be burned out. Uh,
And build the partnerships to get to
yes,
that, right? Because your
yes,
institution can't do it all, right?
no.
So you would have
But
to
the
figure out how you
community
lean in.
100%.
Yes.
Your community has
Yes.
all of the resources.
Yes.
This is a resource-rich country. Your community has resources. You don't have to recreate them. You just have to build systems that connect your students to them so that your
Yes.
faculty can double down on loving your student to the learning outcomes. And the data can help them do that,
Yes.
knowing who the students are when they're coming into the class, knowing how they're engaging with the learning, how they're performing when they go to the next classes, what they're learning and needing to demonstrate, and how they're doing when they get into the workplace. There's all kind of actionable data that our faculty can have access to. Um, and so I will just say this in this moment, when it's easy to be distracted by and to lose hope in the breadth and depth of the attack that I think we all feel. In those moments is when I double down on our students
Yes. Yes.
and listen to them, and I find hope in them. They're just trying to struggle and survive. They need us more profoundly today than they've ever needed us. When we can focus on what is on our locus of control, I'm not saying ignore the political. I'm just saying not give it our power.
That's it.
Give students our power, our emotional resonance, and pay attention to the political. But I'm choosing not to allow it to um, influence how I love our students to success.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for that. So as we wrap up, I'd love to just know, looking ahead, what is next for student success, and other inclusion efforts right now on campuses? What's giving you hope?
Mm. Go ahead, Russell.
I think AI gives me hope that it is a tool that needs refining, but we could actually be the entity that refines it in service to our students. It can integrate disparate services in our colleges and our communities. It could be a tool to support learning in the classroom and faculty instruction. But we're on the precipice of determining what that looks like. And instead of being afraid of it, instead of writing policies to keep it out, I just would encourage us to lean in and own the space rather than fearfully pushing it away.
Mm. I think what gives me hope, quite frankly, are spaces like this, where we come together still as an intellectual community and put our brain power to helping to solve things. Yes, there are moments when we feel completely overwhelmed. There are moments when we're trying to figure out what is the right way to go. But here's my dirty secret. 9 times out of 10, I will put my bet on higher education every time. We have a history of saving this country. When there has been a crisis in the country, and we can see this for over 100 years, every time that there's been a major crisis within our country, higher education has responded, whether that be returning veterans. Actually, if you think about the end of the Civil War, we wanted to build a different society. We started with higher education. Every major crisis has happened. And right now, the crisis may not be as clearly defined that we're in, but we know that to be one that we're in. I know that there are solutions to be found in higher education. I know that the faculty and staff who are on this, the Chronicle's Idea Fest and other spaces will continue to contribute to that. We need writers like you, Jasper, and the Chronicle to exist to do that. We need leaders to do the hard work that Russell is doing on campuses right now. We need our student voices not to get lost in the cacophony of folks who think they know about who our students are and are telling them what the students' experiences should be. We have to learn how to listen to our students and the folks who are critical of that. But that being said, these are the moments that give me hope, that I know that we still know how to convene. We still know how to come together and talk and work through them, and to recognize that there are moments when we become uncomfortable, but we're willing to work through them. So that's what gives me hope.
That's wonderful. Dr. Pollard, Dr. Lowery-Hart, any final thoughts just as we wrap up this conversation?
At a moment where our country seems so divided into different perspectives on the world, uh, there can be a unifier, and it can be us. We can love our communities together by loving our students to success, and loving each other to success. Is it easy? It's not a slogan, it's a commitment. And it won't be easy. Uh, but I think the moment may require it of us. If we give in to the moment and in isolation, in silence, um, in separation, then the moment will have accomplished exactly what it wanted from higher ed, which is to minimize the power that exists when we double down on who our students are and what the economy needs from them. We can do this. We just have to do it more boldly, more strategically, and with more unity.
Mine is very brief. I read this not too long ago. A diamond needs pressure and a lotus needs mud. So, what I would offer to you is that I refuse to allow people to renegotiate our potential without our permission. We have the capacity for greatness. We've done this before. And I have every moment when I wake up and I think about the future of higher education, I still have joy. I still believe that I know my lived experience. I would not be here were it not for higher education. So a Black girl from the South Side of Chicago is doing the work that she gets to do because of higher education. So Every day of the week, I put my money on it. Does it mean that it gets a little ugly, a little tiring, a little exhausting? Does it mean that I have to work to go a little bit higher when others go low? It's okay. That's a part of the job. But I'm grateful to have spaces like this and colleagues that are in the struggle with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That brings us just about to the end of the panel. We covered so much in this hour. I wish we can keep talking about it. But I just want to say thank you both. Again, yeah, this was amazing.